Welcome to the HCI family of podcasts. We're your source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We share our own original research, explore industry trends, and interview executives and thought leaders from across the globe. Join us for practitioner-oriented content around all things leadership, HR, talent management, organizational development, and change management. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with the HCI family of podcasts. Michael Eng, welcome to the conversation today.
Thank you.
It's a real pleasure to be with you. You're joining us from San Diego. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. And today we're going to be talking all about recruitment technology, your expertise in recruitment advertising. And I'm just really thrilled to have the chance to sit down with you and have you share your expertise and your insights with me and my audience today. As we get started, I wanted to share Michael's bio with everybody. Michael Eng, CEO and founder of JobElephant Inc., brings over 2 decades of expertise in recruitment advertising to the table. He has propelled the agency to become a trusted leader in the field, offering unparalleled service and solutions to clients across various industries. Beginning his journey in 1994 as a graphic designer, Michael's entrepreneurial spirit led him to establish JobElephant in 2000, starting from humble beginnings in his garage. Since then, his visionary leadership has guided the agency to unparalleled success, earning recognition as a national leader in recruitment advertising. With a focus on providing outstanding service, Michael personally oversees hundreds of client accounts, many of which have remained loyal to JobElephant for over a decade. His dedication to excellence and commitment to client satisfaction have solidified JobElephant's reputation as one of the most reliable and successful agencies in the industry. And I could go on, Michael, but I'm going to pause there. Anything you would like to highlight by way of your background, personal context before we dive on in?
No. I mean, that was that was a very big introduction. It's and it wasn't written by AI, so that's
Excellent. Well, it truly is a pleasure, and I always love talking with founders, especially your kind of situation. I'm an HR professor. I'm an HR professor, and I'm a consultant, and I do industry facing stuff as well. I like to think of myself as a scholar practitioner, but also engaging in the entrepreneurial space myself. I know that it's tough, starting something. It's tough getting momentum and building it over time. And could you tell us just a little bit about your founder story and how you got from where you were at in your garage to where you're at today?
Yeah, well, I mean, you mentioned the time frame, right? Which was the 1990s, when there was a complete monopoly on how people got jobs back then. It was you had to pick up the local Sunday newspaper and go through the classified ads. There were no other systems. I mean, there was a few things out there. As being a graphic designer in Northern California, I was one of those original, actually on the Craigslist listserv before it became a website. But other than that, it was pretty much the only way you could find a job was through the local newspaper. And then it wasn't until things like Craigslist, things like Monster, and some of their predecessors came into the fore. And I think, I wasn't the only person that saw the writing on the wall, in terms of, oh, wow, this is a real threat to that monopoly that the newspapers held, in terms of how people got jobs. So, I saw that, writing on the wall in terms of like the future is the World Wide Web. And so therefore, threw our hat in the ring in 2000, right during the .com implosion.
The bubble.
I decided perfect time to make a .com, right?
Uh-huh.
It was all
So were you part of the bubble burst initially that you had to overcome?
Yeah, I mean, it was yes and no. I mean, I think that I wasn't looking for funding. It wasn't like a situation like that, so I didn't have to worry. It was all self-funded. So, I was going to say the other advent at that moment was the idea of working remote, in terms of the DSL line. And so that's why was able to start JobElephant, from those humble beginnings, 25 years ago, is because you could get internet access or high-speed internet access in your homes, And that was really kind of a turning point there. So technology has always driven this industry. Recruitment advertising agencies have been around for, well, I think Bernard Hoda started in the 1960s, if I'm not mistaken.
Hmm.
And that whole concept has been around for many, many years. But I think it was those big leaps in technology that really pushed things to the fore because, back in the 1960s, you didn't have things like a laser printer, you didn't have desktop publishing, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So there's always been these innovations, and thank God we got rid of the fax machine because that was just
Except every now and then, I still have someone who requests a fax for something, and I'm like,
right.
"What?"
Yeah. Right. Well, the medical industry, for some reason, is like if
Yeah,
there's one thing that can be killed forever, is like the idea of a fax referral.
yeah, yeah. Awesome. I'm a few years behind you. I was a few years into my college undergraduate education at the time of the dot-com bust, uh, and it was fascinating. Kind of. So I'm trailing Gen X, beginning Gen Z or Gen Millennial. So some people call that the Zennial generation. And so I kind of bridge those two, and just like I remember getting my first email account when I was in high school, and I remember like going to the computer lab at the
Sure.
university, which was like my first exposure really to computers, other than like doing a little bit of gaming on a crummy home computer, stuff like that. And it's just fascinating. I remember the first time I used Google, when it
Right.
was brand new,
Yeah.
all those sorts of things. And so, like you said, all this, the technology, of course, opened the door. It opened the door to so many different things. Of course, the internet changed everything, right? It changed everything in all sorts of different ways and different types of jobs and industries. And certainly these technologies, though, in the HR space and the recruiting space, it opened the door and made all sorts of new opportunities, available, not only for entrepreneurs like yourself, but just we could challenge the status quo. We could challenge these monopolies. We could do things better, more efficiently,
Sure.
more effectively. I mean, my goodness, I'm so glad that we
Right.
don't have to turn to the newspaper to find
Well,
job
there's that, but
opportunities,
I
right?
mean, you know, I think that, to bring it to present day, I still see the vestiges of the paper application,
Sure.
in these applicant tracking systems, questions that are holdovers from 30 years ago, that are frankly just ridiculous in my mind. Like the pervert, how did you hear about this job? It's like, what other, online platform asks you, oh, please tell us how you learned about our service or whatever. It's like, no, we're tracking you all the time. We know exactly where you came from.
Hmm.
And so
Right.
it doesn't make any sense to me, from a technology standpoint, why we're still asking those questions. And then if you have that question and it's not an open, field, it's just like a drop down menu. The items on the drop down menu are, services that no longer exist, like the newspaper, or, they'll say, how did you hear about this job? And it's like the local paper, but well, nobody uses the local paper for advertising anymore. So, I mean, they don't update those lists. And so these are some of the things, like I said, you can still see some of those holdovers from a bygone era in today's workflows. Which, and again, they track this stuff. Somebody, has this report that they run and they say, oh, well, the number one place where people find our jobs is our website, like invariably on every report. It's like, oh, our
It's like,
careers
duh.
page is the bomb. Everybody just comes to our website and starts searching for jobs. And nobody asks the question, well, how did they know to come to our website to look for the job?
Right.
Dude, I mean, if you're looking for a job in a local, you just go to every major employer in that market. I don't think so.
Exactly. Exactly. You mentioned ATS.
Oh, sorry, I use the jargon here, but
No, no,
applicant,
no, good, no, good. And
I
I
don't.
bet most listeners know
Okay.
employee tracking system, but let's talk about that a little bit more because I was actually just having a conversation with a colleague about this the other day. We are kind of like, I was just so frustrated. Like you talk about the vestiges of like the old ways,
Right.
even though we have these new systems, these new technologies that could help us do things so much better, and yet we use these systems that aren't helping us that much. Could
No.
could you speak to that a little bit and how like what you're doing might be able to help us around those limitations?
Yeah, well, I think, the first thing is the first step in everything is to recognize you have a problem, right? And and so I,
Do a little intervention.
yeah, there's been a lot of just, getting the message out like through podcasts like this and talking to my customers and explaining to them, your methodology stinks. This is not how the internet should work or not how your, hiring process should work. And to the point of, of course, nowadays everybody's got a dashboard and a report and all kinds of KPIs about this, that, and the other. But no one seems to, or no one, very few people actually question, well, why are we measuring this? What are we trying to achieve here? So it takes, frankly, much a more philosophical approach every once in a while than, this is the way things have always been done. So that's why we're always going to do it this way. So I specialize in working with public sector or academia, which are just rife with that mentality of this is
Absolutely.
the way we've always done it, so that's the way we're always going to do it. And so sometimes you have to change things up and just challenge that question of like, well, yes, but what's the outcome that we're trying to achieve here? And is you know I again with working in public sector and technology, we see oftentimes that these applicant tracking systems are and the workflows that they build with inside those are designed by committee.
Yeah.
And so everybody gets their say, and then you end up with these very convoluted application processes, which I guarantee the vast majority of job seekers absolutely hate. I
Yeah.
mean, there is no love lost for any applicant tracking system from a job seeker who has to go through a 12-step workday application process. And
Over and over and over again. Every
yes, right,
single.
because yes, because every instance of it, every company has it, and then they have to go and start again and start again. And so that, we need to set up systems that can be for automation through AI or whatever that might look like and build ourselves out. But we still have a problem, and a fundamental problem that I recognized about a decade ago, where you have essentially job boards, whether that's Monster or today's parlance, so that, Indeed or LinkedIn or, again, all these things still exist. But you have a database of jobs on one side, right? Here are all the jobs that are available. And then you have an applicant tracking system or a career site for a particular employer, which is a database of jobs.
Yeah.
And we're trying to achieve some outcome here, get people to apply, get people to complete the application, and ultimately hire. The problem is the two systems don't talk to each other.
Yeah.
They don't, and they're almost to the point where there's a financial incentive to eat each other.
Mm.
So then you
So
have,
speak more to that a little bit,
yeah, well,
because
you
you're
have,
absolutely right. They don't talk to
yeah,
each other well. When you think about the applicant experience, as part of the employment life cycle, the employee
right,
life cycle and employee experience, like it's bad.
right,
It's rough, and most people hate it,
right,
right? And so many people will apply to these different systems, and they never even get past like the AI screening stage, anyways. So they have to go through 12 steps of like this convoluted process to never even get looked at. And it's just so frustrating. And then if they do move on, it just puts a bad taste in their mouth as they move forward,
well,
as
and not
part of
only
their
that, but
holistic
that bad,
experience with this organization.
yeah,
Um,
that bad taste ends up becoming, damaging to the brand.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, if I got, applied for jobs at, I don't know, I'm just using Coca-Cola or whatever, and I get rejected over and over again, maybe I'm going to start drinking Pepsi.
Hmm.
So I think that that's the kind of damage that can be done there, is that you have to look at these job seekers as anybody else that could be using your product. It could be a customer or at someday the head of HR and making decisions as to which applicant tracking system to pick. um,
Right, right. I mean,
so
just think about all of the lost talent, like the access to talent. I know the labor market ebbs and flows, and we talk about the great resignation and the great this and that and the other, and like there's all these buzz terms that get thrown around, and obviously there's ebbs and flows, right? And so at any given point in time, it might be a better job market for employers versus for job seekers or whatever. But the reality is, in the aggregate, like if you zoom out, we have skills gaps, right? We have huge skills gaps, especially in healthcare, STEM, a lot of these specialized areas. So you know, we have a hard time finding good people to fill highly skilled roles. And then we have these types of systems that weed out really good people. And so you think about all of the opportunity cost of that, all of the lost labor potential of all of that, not to mention the brand issues, like you mentioned, like someone, you probably know these numbers, but like someone must have calculated like the total cost of all of this, to companies and to the economy. It's got to be huge,
Yeah.
like I can't imagine, this level of inefficiency in hiring, how that's good for anybody. Yet we don't challenge the status quo. We don't question these systems. We continue doing the same thing over and over again, and we continue having the same issues and not being able to fill positions. And then people get burned out because they have to cover three jobs, and the ball keeps rolling, right?
Yep, for sure. And yes, to your point about skills matching and things like that, that's what if we were to talk to LinkedIn or Indeed, and why are they, in Indeed's case, they essentially have an applicant tracking system built in for their customers to capture at least the very top end of that hiring funnel. Manage the application flow, if you will, in their own platform, because they're like, look, this is better than what else is out there in the space right now in terms of the ATS. But there's also a financial incentive for them to keep those eyeballs in their own platform, as opposed to shifting them off to some other big tech company, whether that's Oracle or Workday or SAP,
Right.
you name it, that are invested in that ATS space. So you even have, an ATS like Smart Recruiters, who then turn around and create a job board for all their customers. And so they, trying to bypass the media. So on the one hand side, the media is trying to become the technology, and the technology is trying to become the media. And the two are just going to try to, kill each other over time, is how I look at it.
Mm.
And, totally self-serving, that's why somebody like myself, a middleman, such as an advertising agency that tries to be impartial, tries to, give advice on like, okay, these are the technologies that we can use in order that they can play nice, etc. And I can help bridge that, chasm that exists between the two. And so that's what we've at JobElephant have really invested heavily in, is these technologies to be able to, essentially plug into all the job boards of the world. And we work with like 25,000 different media sources worldwide. And then on the other hand side, there's there are about 1,000 different applicant tracking systems in the world. We only work with
Yeah.
100 or so. They start to look alike after a while, the top 100 or so, we have integrations to, so that we can push and pull data oftentimes, and with varying degrees of success. But that's, to me, where we're still in the early stages of this process, if you will. Like, we're still trying to get rid of the fax machine. We're still trying to
Yeah.
get rid of the barriers to solving the problem. And that is not the sexy part. That's the plumbing. We're talking about, we need to connect this to that, and it's not, like I said, it's not sexy, but that's fundamental in order to be able to have the data flow and to be able to create new KPIs, or just whatever that new experience might be, to help expedite the process. And then maybe we can put in some other goals along the way here, as to just, customer satisfaction and that sort of thing. How can we make it so that job seekers are happier and are delighted with this experience? I
I
can
mean,
train.
that's I would love for job seekers to just not be like horrified and
Right,
like pulling their hair out by the experience. The idea of being delighted by the experience, like that's that's
right,
amazing.
right.
But yeah, absolutely. So what you're doing, is trying to streamline everything. And I'm thinking, my experience with ATS largely has been negative, probably like most people's. But then I think of the few experiences where it is easier, and I think of like a LinkedIn easy apply feature on LinkedIn, right? So not all their jobs, but they have their job board aspect of LinkedIn. And then they have some jobs have this easy apply button, and all you have to do is click, and maybe there's like two more clicks, and then you
Right.
have applied. Um, I actually have no idea though how effective that is, and I'm suspicious that it's not effective at all for job
Oh,
seekers.
well, it is. I mean, it definitely increases if it reduces fake friction. Absolutely.
It
So
increases the number of people applying for stuff.
it does, but in and the rub there is that if you've got, and again, I'm working with higher education, and so I'm trying to hire for professors or things like that that might have knockout questions along the way, or various credentials that need to be uploaded that are specialized and so forth.
Sure,
So you end up as a written employer dumbing down the barrier to the point where it's just you just have to step over it as opposed to leap over that barrier. And so you could then end up with more problem on the other side where you've got too many applications that are completely unqualified, frankly,
yeah,
for the role. Um, and the other piece there, and I hate to put on my tinfoil hat here, but when you have those systems that have the quote easy apply or whatever, from an employer standpoint, that is terrifying. And I'll tell you why. Because the way that those systems work is that you've basically allowed Indeed or LinkedIn, who's owned by Microsoft, to not to into your ATS, and they will consume all the data that you give them. In other words, they're not going to just see that, John, you applied for a job at Utah Valley. They're going to see that every person that's ever applied to any job ever. And then they're going to have that data. I don't know what that's going to do, but and I'm not a conspiratorial type of guy, but I'm skeptic.
yeah, interesting. Yeah, and we've talked about the AI aspect of screenings, and
Yep.
again, layers of technology upon all of this as we try to figure out how to do it better, more effectively. Um, as we get towards the end of our time, we start to wrap things up. Paint us a picture of like a positive future and a healthy positive path forward, given this current situation. Like, yeah, we're in a place where we have these legacy systems. We have, things like Workday. Workday's great. I love Workday. It's helpful in a lot of ways, but it's been around for a long time, and it's you build upon these legacy systems and patch and like all these things. And so at some point, you just got to like almost take a step back and just completely question, is this system working? Like at all, or do we start from scratch? So like walk us through, like how you view this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't believe that we'll get to a point where there's just somebody comes up with a great idea to replace the ATS. I think that this is kind of a necessary evil in a lot of ways and it's a Swiss Army knife of any HR office, right? Because it does so much. It connects to this, it does this, and then you got performance evaluations down the road, all sorts of different things that connect to this hub and I think as a concept of a hub, that will be around for a while. And look, different businesses have different needs around that, right? Some people are totally fine with just using Indeed's lightweight ATS as their ATS, for
Yeah,
screening and things like that. Or scheduling interviews, whatnot. But and then others have very specialized needs. So I think that I mean, again, there's 1,000 different ATSs in the world, and there's that many for a reason because there's a lot of different kinds of businesses out there. So I don't think that we'll ever get a situation where like somebody comes in and says, "Oh, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread," and it will solve every HR solution. I do think that you'll see, I mean, with the rush towards AI and what AI means to different people, um, I think it's a very nebulous definition at this stage. But for me, it comes back to the fundamentals of plumbing. that like if these things aren't connected to each other, then you're not going to be able to measure anything. You're not going to be able to then make any kind of budgets. You're not going to be able to make any kind of predictions. You're not going to be able to do anything going forward without proper measurements of these things. So that's the where we are today. What the future holds, I have really no clue as to how that's going to go because there's going to be different motivations for different companies to do things with these scripts or robots or what have you. And there's going to be anecdotal stories about my avatar talking to your avatar and just making a deal, and then now I've got to go do some job that I was told to do. So I don't know how that's going to play out, and culturally, I mean that's it's very difficult to as we look at at least in the United States, the diversity of opinions that we have in this country, just culturally. So I think that who knows how that all plays out long term. And when I say long term, I'm talking just 5 years from now.
Yeah, seriously. Long term, 2 years from now.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it's happening fast, but to me, it's all about just being data driven and looking at making sure that I have happy customers who are getting the outcomes that they predicted or wanted from whatever that experience was, and so I always we should have probably started with this, but I mean, John, you're looking at HR, which is this very complicated field, frankly, from what I've seen on the outside as as somebody who's been sitting and working with recruiters for 30 years. I have a lot of respect of like the different tasks that they have. And I focus on like not even
One
1%
sliver.
of their job. And I just do that one tiny percent better than anybody because I have, frankly, more data than anybody about it.
Excellent. Well, Michael, this has just been a really fun conversation. Fun to kind of think out loud about the limitations, the current state of things, and where things could possibly be going in the future. Fun to learn more about your organization, what you're doing, and the cool stuff you're doing. As we wrap things up for today, I just wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, your team, and then give us the final word for today.
Yeah, sure. So, Michael Lang, I'm on the usual suspects like LinkedIn and such. But I'm also I'm a big believer in customer service and high touch. So that's why people can get a hold of me at michael@jobelephant.com, very simply. So, it sounds like I'm a, one trick pony or a mom and pop type shop, but I've got a whole team of about 3 dozen people behind the scenes all across the country that are helping with this endeavor. We represent about 1,200 colleges and universities, maybe a quarter of that higher education market. And so I think we have a really good foothold there in terms of knowing how to hire for any type of thing under the sun. So, the same rules apply, public sector, private sector. It really doesn't matter what we're doing because we have the same fundamentals around that.
Yeah, excellent. Well, Michael, thank you so much. It's just been a pleasure. I encourage the audience to reach out, to get connected, find out more about what Michael and his team can do for you. Let's do recruitment better.
Yeah.
And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the podcast. We hope you stay healthy and safe, and please join us again soon.